Hello and welcome to the Low Carb Conversations podcast. I am your host, Holly Jean, and our guest today is a holistic minded realtor and healthy move expert, Cristina Cappelli. Welcome, Cristina.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am so glad to have you on. You are not our typical type of guest for this show, but as a holistic health show, we cover a wide variety of nutrition, health, wellness topics. So it only makes sense to consider where you live, like your home, as something that is a factor in our health. So when we're considering healthy lifestyle factors, your house is definitely a factor to consider. Um, our home impacts our health in many different ways. Um, and so I want to talk about that with you today. So, what are some types of things that home buyers, people moving, need to consider when making a move?
So, you touched on the importance of making a good choice when you decide where you want to move. So, there's a lot of research that has been done that shows that the number one factor affecting your well-being is actually where you live. And most people who decide where to live out of their criteria for where they're moving, health is not even on the list, right? So it's budget, it's convenience, it's school district. And so zero thought is usually put into the overall health and wellness of one's environment when they are buying a house. So where I like to start is first and foremost to learn about the person, because what means being healthy to me sometimes means something different to someone else. So I really like to learn about their families and what they value. Once I learn a bit about who they are, then we can kind of like generalize their home search for factors like proximity to cell towers, proximity to registered polluters, proximity to Superfund sites. Basically, no matter who the person is, they probably won't want to live next to those factors. Unfortunately, all too often, they don't know that those factors exist, much less where they're located.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point. A lot of people really don't consider these things, and it's maybe not necessarily because they don't take their health into consideration, but it's most likely due to the fact that they just don't know. There are so many things I want to talk about today, and you've already touched on a couple of them. But first, I want to back up because I feel like I missed a spot. How did you even become a realtor that came concerned about health and helping people? How did you become like this kind of go-to expert, especially in a certain like health and wellness community, as being the person to go to for someone who's looking for moving but wants to also make sure they're moving the right move or making the right move for their health?
So I was an attorney, and when I started looking for my own house, for my first house, I just had this basic kind of list that I wanted to meet, to buy a home that I could afford within budget in the best area. And when I say best, again, I focus on access to things that will make my family healthier and staying away from things that will cause my family health concerns. And my realtor, who was a great realtor, top realtor in the area, Southern California, we have there's a lot of great realtors in Southern California. She really had no idea what I was talking about or asking. And I don't really blame her, because her job is to sell real estate, and all of the factors that 99% of people are concerned about, or even have the knowledge to be concerned about, right? Because others are concerned, they just don't know that there's an option for a better way of purchasing real estate. So she could not offer me any information of value, and I had to do all the research myself. Because I was working as a lawyer, like that's no fun, right? You outsource help. They get paid to help you, so that way they could help you achieve your goals. And it's disheartening when someone who you are paying really cannot help you achieve your goals. So anyway, I ended up doing all the research myself, and I realized that there was this huge gap in real estate services for people like me. And so I just started selling real estate. Thankfully, there are more people concerned with these matters than you would think once they learn that they become available to them. And so I have been nonstop busy ever since.
Yeah, and you're right. So many people are aware of things, especially things that you've mentioned, like cell towers. I feel like that's starting to become more known as something you want to try to avoid with where you live. And yeah, especially now when so many people in the US and many other parts of the world, like Canada, Australia, 2020 and 2021, like these years are seeing a massive amount of people moving, and a lot more people asking questions about their health and wanting to know where to live. And we have a really sophisticated kind of a health savvy audience. And so I am just going out on a limb here and going to guess that we probably have a lot of listeners who are they've either recently moved or are looking to make a move themselves. So I'm excited to offer this topic to people who are concerned when looking to move and the kind of things that they should be looking at. And you've already touched on a couple, but I have an article here. It's actually from WebMD, and it talks about the social determinants of health. And the social determinants of health, they call them SDOHs. They describe conditions in the place where you're going to live, work, play, go to church, and through all the life stages. These are things that most people are familiar with in making considerations when they're looking to move. They're things you already kind of touched on. But these things do affect our daily lives, as you said, and that can be either in positive or negative ways. This article states, as an example, a neighborhood may have mass transit, which makes it easy to get around and cuts down on pollution, but it may lack grocery stores or access to healthy food. So with so many people uprooting and moving, there's these basic things. When you have a new client, in addition to these things you already touched on, like Superfund sites, you said, the cell towers, access to food and groceries, right? I think that's what you
So
mentioned.
I mean, that's really important, simply having access to affordable, fresh fruit and vegetables and local meat. And that unfortunately is not available in all places. And you would be surprised, just because an area is urban and has the mass transit, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have options for healthy food at a realistic price. And convenience matters. No matter how much you want to be healthy, if you put yourself in a situation where you cannot achieve your health goals of healthy eating, exercise, with ease and convenience, like, it probably won't happen, because we all are busy.
Yeah. Do you think that it's realistic to expect to find all of those things? Like, is it easy for clients to be able to find something that's within budget in a neighborhood they desire with all the things? Or where do you see people making the most compromise? Because if they can't check every box on their list.
So it's interesting, because most clients will tell you everything that they want, and then you have to ask them for the budget. But unfortunately, the budget is the single factor most affecting what you're able to attain. And almost at any budget, no, certainly at any budget, you can make the most wise decision, because not everyone can move, but even within a certain geographical area of, let's say, 20 miles, that's your budget can usually get you more space if you're willing to move a little bit further out. More space usually comes with more control over your environment. So that is typically step number one, is getting a backyard, making sure you have somewhere to sit on a porch, to have some vitamin D. Small steps like that can help you achieve a healthier outcome. And so, yeah, you might be able to get a nicer, beautiful condo and a high rise. And then the home that you would get a bit further away would be the same budget, but it might not be as new. Again, you have to kind of consider all factors. And so I think I am the hardest working realtor in the business, because the traditional factors are 100% still very, very important. But then comes all of these additional factors. And of course, there is a compromise. Even me, I mean, like, if I had unlimited budget, I probably wouldn't be in my house right now. That said, I'm very happy with the choice that I made, and very grateful that my budget was able to help me get it.
Yeah, unlimited budget really makes a big difference.
Yes.
But I don't know too many people shopping with unlimited budget.
It's shocking how many people have extremely high budgets who also just pay no attention to any of this. And then, they wonder why they're dealing with health issues, because although a lot of health issues do affect people with low access to healthy food and amenities that help one's health, the truth is that cancer, autoimmune disease, it strikes at every socioeconomic background.
Correct. Yeah, you're right. It doesn't matter how much money you have or where you live. Those are lifestyle diseases that we really can't escape. You touched on something. So you mentioned some people who have unlimited budgets really aren't as maybe not necessarily as concerned about the health stuff. So do you find yourself as a realtor, when you get those clients who maybe aren't as educated in the factors that would impact their home and surrounding home environments, do you find yourself as more of an educator in that area, or do you just kind of let the client lead, and if they're not interested, you don't touch on it? Or how does your role fit in there?
So unfortunately, I just cannot help myself, because no matter what they're looking for, I still look for the most basic. I still look for the polluters. I still look for the Superfund sites. I still have a general understanding of where there's access to naturopaths and like-minded people. So that's another thing, right? Is like, it's very nice to live somewhere with other people who can create just like a network of like-minded people. Nothing helps you stay healthy like having friendships. And it's easy to bond with other people who also have similar interests of health and wellness. And all too often, a lot of the people who do seek out my services have had a very negative experience with the health of one of their family members. So that's another way to kind of connect with others and share experiences. And so there are clusters of us throughout the United States.
Yeah, and you touched on something really good there. It's like, more importantly than where you live, it's the community that surrounds you. And whether that's the community of homes or the community of humans, community is an essential part of health, no matter where you live. I want to talk about this next article here. Then I just lost my spot. But it is talking about, this is actually about oil wells in Los Angeles County in California. And it's talking about these homes in an area that have a bunch of pollution. The resident in this article has lived here for more than 2 decades. She's used to the smell of rotten eggs, like coming from the oil wells that surround her neighborhood. She's used to her neighbors describing chronic coughs, skin rashes, and cancer diagnoses, and asthma that's affecting her own family, because she only lives 1,500 feet from a refinery. She says when people are getting sick with cancer or having asthma, they might think it's normal or even blame genetics, because that's what we're told, right? But we often don't look at the environment and we think that the chemicals that they're breathing is the cause. And so I thought this was a great article for a couple reasons. One, this is not very far from where I just moved from in Long Beach, California. And I know that smell that she's talking about. I've seen the oil refinery off the freeway. And so I wanted to talk about this, especially I'm thinking about a lot of people, like Texas is one of the biggest states right now that's seeing the most influx of people moving. I didn't realize California had as many oil refineries as it does, but Um, is this something that you look into for people when they're looking for a home as well, and something you talk about?
So as soon as I get any address from a client, like, oh, I'm interested in this house, I automatically think air, water, soil. What is the quality of air, water, and soil? I am not a specialist in any one of those particular categories, but you should have access to water. If you live in a desert, I understand some people have to live in areas that are deserts. It's very challenging to have access to fresh water, to clean water, to water that doesn't have to be very heavily chlorinated and treated in order for us to consume. So when choosing a state, looking at if you can choose a state that has access to flowing water, does not experience drought throughout the year, that's ideal. Then so soil is often negatively affected by oil. Obviously, so is air and so is water, but the most is the soil. Same for factory farming. If you could stay away from oil refineries, nuclear power plants, the industrial farming is not surprisingly awful, but it's pretty awful. You know, if you should not live by an industrial farm if you don't have to, whether it's vegetables or livestock, both just not very good for soil in terms of runoff. So we have air, we have water, and soil. So with the air quality is very important. There are a lot of states that are very polluted. A lot of areas within states like Los Angeles, the Bronx, and New York, rates of asthma are through the roof. And so we know that there's a direct correlation between asthma, our quality of breathing, and the air quality. So if you could stay away from those places, that would be great. But then you also have the registered polluters. This is very easy information to access on your own. You want to stay away from them. They're registered polluters because they have to say that they are actually harming their neighborhood, you know. So air, water, soil. You can control your water to a certain extent if you live in an urban community, and you know, if you have to drop the Starbucks latte, if you whatever you have to do to get yourself proper water filtration, make it happen, because some of the most luxury zip codes in this country have some of the worst water quality for drinking.
And I'll put a link in the show notes, because you can go to the environmental working group and put in your zip code, and it'll give you a rating for your water in your area. So that's actually a good source to use, just for anyone, whether you're looking to move or not, just looking to see what your water quality is where you are. So I will link up to that.
I'm sorry, but if anyone finds good water quality anywhere in this country, please let me know, because I have yet to find it. So keep me posted on that.
I think there's the scale it's either like 1 to 10. I feel like there's an 11 in there. So I don't know if it's 1 to 11. So what are you mostly seeing? Like I have only seen like 8s and 9s.
So I don't think that the criteria, the standards are where they should be for, you know, they're very, very poor standards to meet. And so I just don't even really buy into the rating system too much.
Yeah, and that's a good point too, because what is considered acceptable is not necessarily in alignment for what is considered healthy or safe from a health standpoint. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
It's not alkaline, y'all. It's not alkaline, okay?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think a lot of people don't realize the stuff that they're putting into the water to cleanse it and make it safe. The types of chemicals that go into the water is just really nasty. But you talked about air quality, so I want to circle back there. Sonara just said circle back. I hate that expression. But this article also mentions that 500,000 people live within a quarter mile of active wells, and these wells release things that are air pollutants like benzene, hydrogen sulfide, particulate matter, and formaldehyde. So those are just some things to consider if you are living near oil wells. My husband was born in Inglewood, California, and grew up in Long Beach. And while he was a kid, he always had asthma. But as an adult, as he moved, like he doesn't have it anymore. And I know people say that you outgrow asthma, but I can't help but think that there's like part of me that maybe it was because he was growing up and playing baseball and going to school right by all these oil fields, that I wonder if that had some kind of a contribution to his health as a kid.
Mhm.
There's an article in PubMed, anyone can search this, but it's written by the Surgeon General, and it's addressing the connection between health and homes. And it does talk about, in particular, poor air quality and how it does contribute to cancer, cardiovascular disease, asthma, other illnesses. And as you said, poor water quality can lead to gastrointestinal illness. A lot of those cleansers and detergents that they put in water, that kills off our gut bacteria, our gut flora that we need as the basis for a healthy immune function. So that's just part of what can go into our water. But there's a whole other range of health conditions, including neurological effects, and as mentioned, cancer. So those are just some things to consider. There's another article here that is talking about the 5G tower in Arizona. And Arizona is another state that is seeing a lot of growth, a lot of people moving to the area. So that's why I thought this was a good article. And I also feel like cell radiation and just like the advancement of our technology and all these smart devices and Bluetooths and all these electromagnetic fields that are just surrounding us everywhere. I think people are becoming more and more aware of the fact that we are just inundated with these types of frequencies and expressing concern about the lack of safety studies out there and just how much like our regulating agencies just don't really seem to care at all. So this article, it talks about, like I said, this article in Gilbert, there's a woman, they're putting a 5G cell tower right up next to her front yard. And so she has concerns and she's trying to express them with her community boards, and she's just running into brick walls, not really going anywhere. She's not being heard. And she just feels like the level of concern for the health of the community is not where it should be. Cristina, this is certainly not my area of expertise. Like, how much do you know, or are you familiar with these 5G towers? Are there different kinds of towers? Like, what do people need to know or look at when looking at a property that might be near a tower?
So I don't live in a city that has 5G. I like to stay away from it for a number of reasons, including privacy concerns. Essentially, 5G is a frequency used to support the Internet of Things. So that way things can communicate with one another. The way that telecommunications companies profit off of 5G, right? Because they're not installing these devices all throughout major cities to make your life easier. Ultimately, it's for profit. And so they're able to receive a lot of information that in turn they're able to sell. So 5G is one step ahead, but even with just having internet in your home, you should buy your own router. Now we're talking about privacy, so I'm getting a bit off track. But if you have your own router, then you're not renting the one from the cable company. So that way they could go ahead and sell the information of everything that you saw to companies. But anyway, so that 5G for me is a privacy concern. I don't want to live next to a device that is constantly receiving information based on what I am consuming in my house. That said, the safety studies done on 5G have been completed by the FCC. They're the ones who regulate 5G. The FCC doesn't have one doctor on their payroll. So in terms of studies, like nobody knows and nobody really cares either. So because I have not conducted my own personal study, I would just like to be as far away from 5G as I can be. I don't need the Internet of Things. My babies will never have a diaper that notifies my smartphone when they use the bathroom. My refrigerator doesn't have to communicate with the grocery store. I don't need it. I don't want it. For your average person who might not have as much control over their circumstances, I would recommend not living next to a church or a school or a public office building where they are very likely to lease space for these devices.
Yeah, and that's something that's so frustrating to me because we do not know the safety of these. We know, as you mentioned, the people on the FCC do not have any kind of health training or background or any experts on their team to advise them of what they're doing with cell towers and the safety of the community. And it just breaks my heart that they often lease these towers out onto locations where, like you mentioned, church and schools, where they are around children, and essentially we don't know what the effects are. This article, the lady mentioned that this happens to be a Verizon tower they're putting in front of her house, and that she was given a fact sheet, and all the homeowners were given a fact sheet, and it just says, yeah, research has been conducted on radio frequency for decades, and it meets FCC safety standards. Well, I was curious because I didn't know, so I wanted to know, what are these FCC safety standards? And I found a public health physician, and he's also an EMF expert. His name's David Carpenter, and he's the director of Institute for Health at the Environment. I'm going to back up. He's the director of the Institute for Health and the Environment at the University of Albany. And so he's been on public record. He has served as like an expert witness in court cases. And he is saying that those standards, they have not been reviewed for years, and they're just grossly inadequate when it comes to protection for human health. And he also says the FCC has zero health expertise in this area. And I'm one person where I'm saying, if you're a governmental agency or something on the media, whatever you say, I'm going to believe the opposite or do the opposite.
Well, ultimately, if you are living in this day and age and you don't realize that your health is only you're the only one who has control over your health, then you are living under a rock. You cannot expect others to make choices that benefit your family, when often these people who are offering you their offerings are also benefiting financially based on these offerings. So buyer beware.
Yeah, and like you said, we need to take our health into our own hands. And there are situations where, say, you're living in an apartment building or a high-rise building where you are surrounded by every single person in that building's router, you're surrounded by everybody's devices. So you're getting more exposure. There are things you can do to remediate your environment, to protect yourself. There's always things we can do, because we know we can't be perfect. We know we're going to be exposed to things that are going to harm our health. It's just part of living life these days, but we can control the things we can. And if we know we're getting exposure to something in one area, where else can we clean up our environment to kind of balance it out? And that's really what it's all about. So Cristina, what is your advice to people who are looking to move? And I know not everyone is going to be moving where you live and can't have you as a realtor, but if someone's looking for a realtor or looking to move, where are some places that they should start, just so they can start doing their own things? Like, is the internet the best place to look? Like, if they're finding a home that they like, is the best place to start on a personal level is to just do their own searches for Superfund sites and registered polluters and that kind of stuff?
So I highly suggest working with a realtor who is well-versed in healthy living, healthy homes. There are more of us than you would realize, and I have a great referral network throughout the entire nation with really, really wonderful people that can help you. And so, I mean, you don't have to pay for these additional services, right? A realtor who can help you with devising some kind of healthy home criteria is going to make the same amount as a realtor who is simply going to sell you the house. So first and foremost, if possible, reach out to me, get hooked up with someone who is on the same wavelength. And if for some reason that can't happen, if you're renting, so when you're a renter, it's a lot harder to put in a lot of advanced thinking into the place that you rent, because you're typically renting because either you're not sure if you want to live there long term, if it's a transition, there's all different kinds of reasons. And so if you are renting, I would suggest doing the most minimal research of looking up where there's a Superfund site, looking up where the closest cell tower is. There's a website called www.antennasearch.com, and you could see where the closest ones are. If you just plug in your address, it's pretty easy. For Superfund sites, they're also a matter of public record. Some are worse than others. If they're an active cleanup site, they're worse than one that was used in the past. You want to stay away from oil refineries. You want to stay away from areas where there's high air pollution, bad air quality. Like, all of this is public information. So you just have to do your due diligence.
Okay, that's really good to know that there is a network. There are people out there, realtors who are specializing in this information, and you can find it, because I know, because I just went through it. Looking for a house and moving is already stressful enough. You are already doing so many things. Take something off your plate and outsource this to an expert who can have your best interest, your best health insurance interest in mind when looking to make a healthy move. Cristina, where can our listeners find you?
Well, you can send me an email. That's probably the easiest way. I don't do a ton of social media, which I know is not great for education, but I'm a private person. And so you can send me an email, Cristina, spelled Cristina, at makehealthymoves.com. So it's Cristina, Cristina, at makehealthymoves.com.
Wonderful. I will also link that up in the show notes in case you're driving, listening, can't write that down. I will link her email in there. And thank you. This has been really informative. I know that our listeners will get a lot out of this. And hopefully, if someone is looking to move and hasn't considered this stuff before, they are definitely considering it now. That is the end of today's episode. Our music is created by Andrew Bowden, and production services are by Kevin Kennedy Spain of Disc of Light Media. Have a great week, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, Holly.
Bye. Thanks.